A poor driver slaps his billionaire madam in the middle of Lagos traffic, and that single slap changes everything. What she thought was an insult was actually the moment that saved her life. But what follows? Betrayal, scandal, and a shocking truth buried in the shadows. You won't believe who wanted her dead. Watch this story to the end. It will leave you breathless. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful African stories. The sun that morning sat like a blazing torch over Ikoyi, its golden rays bouncing sharply off the polished body of a black Rolls-Royce Phantom. The car glided smoothly along the expressway, its tinted windows hiding two very different worlds inside. In the driver's seat sat Chibuzo Nwoke, 33 years old, lean but strong, the kind of man who carried the weight of survival in the quiet set of his jaw. His white uniform shirt clung to his shoulders, perfectly ironed, and his black tie was straight and neat. His dark brown eyes scanned the road ahead, always alert. To him, every turn, every vehicle, every shadow was something to watch. Years of hustling in Lagos had taught him that danger often wore familiar faces. Behind him, sunk into the plush white leather seat, sat Madame Adaku Obioma, billionaire, business mogul, woman of fire. Her Ankara suit shimmered with gold embroidery. Her jet-black hair was pulled into a sleek bun, and an expensive pair of diamond earrings caught the sunlight through the windshield. She was on the phone, and her voice carried the authority of someone who was used to being obeyed. If that contract is not signed by close of business today, she snapped into the phone, then tell Mr. Banjo he can go and build his empire elsewhere. I don't negotiate with people who lack vision. She ended the call with a sharp tap and tossed the phone onto the seat beside her. Her lips tightened. She was irritated, and when Madame Adaku was irritated, the world around her trembled. Chibu's hands gripped the steering wheel not out of fear, but focus. The expressway ahead was unusually clear. A few commercial buses trailed in the opposite direction, their conductors yelling destinations into the humid air. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of an Okada horn echoed, but all seemed calm. Then, as the Rolls-Royce approached the long curve by the old toll gate, something flickered in his peripheral vision, a black SUV, tinted, moving too fast. Chibu's trained eyes snapped to the side mirror. The SUV was closing in. His chest tightened. Lagos was full of reckless drivers, but this was different. The SUV wasn't just driving fast, it was positioning itself. Why is this one tailing us so closely, he thought. He leaned slightly forward, lowering his right hand closer to the hazard light just in case. His instincts were whispering, and he had learned to listen to them. The world had once called him poor, but the streets had trained him to see things that others missed. The SUV jerked to the side once, twice, then swerved suddenly into their lane, cutting dangerously close to the Rolls-Royce. "Jesus!" Chibu hissed, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. Madame Adaku, unfazed, was scrolling through her second phone. "Chibu, maintain your lane. Don't scratch my car. Oh, do you know how much this thing costs?" He didn't answer. His heartbeat was hammering against his ribs now. The black SUV was neck to neck with them. Then it happened. The back window of the SUV lowered just a few inches, enough to reveal the glint of steel in the hand of a hooded man. The muzzle of a silenced gun peeked out like a snake preparing to strike. Time slowed. The roar of the road faded. Chibu's eyes widened, locking on the mirror. The man was taking aim. He didn't need to think twice. He didn't have time to speak, to explain, or to protect himself. "Madam," he barked. She didn't look up. "Madam," louder now. But she was tapping her screen, shaking her head at a message. Then the trigger finger twitched. In one desperate, instinctive move, Chibu slammed the brakes with his left foot, twisted his upper body, and swung his right hand hard across Madame Adaku's face, knocking her sideways into the leather seat. At the same instant, his left hand shoved her down. Crack! The slap echoed inside the car like thunder. Before Madame could the silenced bullet ripped through the air, piercing the window where her head had been seconds earlier. The tempered glass shattered, fragments exploding inward. A deafening ring filled the car as the Rolls-Royce spun violently to the right, screeching into the curb. The tires screamed against the hot tar. The car skidded. Horns blared. Bystanders jumped back. The world became a blur of smoke, dust, glass shards, and screaming brakes. Finally, impact. The car slammed into a concrete barrier and stopped. For a moment, there was silence. A thin trail of smoke rose from the front bonnet. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air. Madame Adaku's handbag lay on the floor, her sunglasses tilted awkwardly on her head. Chibu's chest heaved as he scanned the road, ready for a second shot. The black SUV sped off, disappearing into the chaotic Lagos traffic like a phantom. "Chineke me," he muttered under his breath. Then he turned back to Madame Adaku. She sat there, blinking in disbelief. Her perfectly powdered cheek bore the red print of his palm. A billionaire woman, a woman who commanded CEOs with a glance, and her driver, had just slapped her. Her lips trembled, not from pain, from rage. "Chibuzo," she whispered slowly, her voice heavy with disbelief. "You slapped me?" Chibu's breathing was uneven. Sweat ran down the side of his face. He glanced at the hole in the window, the shattered glass on the seat beside her. "Madam, they were shooting," he gasped. "If I no push you down, that bullet—" But her ears heard none of it. Her pride drowned out reason. She lifted her hand to her cheek, still burning from the sting. She had built an empire, crushed men twice his size, and no one had ever laid a hand on her, not even her husband. She straightened slowly, her posture regaining its usual iron stiffness. Around them, bystanders were running toward the car, shouting, "Wetin happen? Accident? No gunshot, I hear, oh?" But inside the car, the temperature dropped. She looked at him, eyes burning, her voice low but slicing through the noise outside like a blade. "Chibuzo, you're finished." His heart sank, not because of fear of losing the job, but because she didn't understand. She hadn't seen the hooded man. She hadn't seen death coming for her. All she felt was insult. Chibu turned his face back to the road, scanning for the SUV again. Gone. Whoever they were, they had planned it perfectly, fast and quiet. This was no random robbery. Someone wanted her dead. Outside, a traffic warden was blowing his whistle frantically. A group of onlookers had gathered, phones out, recording the spectacle. A bullet hole in a Rolls-Royce was not something Lagos saw every day. Madame Adaku finally pushed open her door, stepping out on shaky legs, but masking it with pride. She straightened her suit and adjusted her wig as though nothing had happened. She was used to controlling the narrative. Even chaos couldn't strip that away from her. "Madam, madam, are you okay?" a woman shouted from the crowd. She didn't answer. She raised one finger at Chibu. "You're done. Pack your useless self and go. I don't ever want to see your face again." He stepped out slowly, his palms trembling. His uniform shirt was soaked with sweat. He wanted to shout, to beg her to listen, to explain that he had just saved her life, but the crowd was already buzzing with gossip. Someone whispered, "See as driver slap am. Na small a remain. She for don kapai." Another, "And that man fit no work again? Who they slap madam like that?" Chibu's heart twisted. In the eyes of the world, he was just a poor driver, and poor men's truths often die quietly in rich people's stories. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were approaching. Lagos traffic police always came late, but their presence meant this incident would make the headlines. Madame Adaku turned her face away from him like he was filth. Her driver of 3 years, the man who had carried her safely through storms and long nights, all erased in a single slap. She climbed into the back seat of a security jeep that had arrived from the convoy behind. 2 bodyguards flanked her. Even this moment, she held her chin high like a queen. Chibu stood alone beside the shattered Rolls Royce. Broken glass crunched beneath his shoes. Sweat trickled down his temple. A million thoughts ran through his mind. What if I hadn't acted? What if that bullet had found her? Would she have thanked me from the grave? The officers reached the scene and began shouting orders, roping off the area, examining the bullet hole. But Madame had already decided the story. To her, the danger was invisible. The slap was not. She didn't see the assassin's gun. She only saw a driver crossing a line that no one was allowed to cross. Her last words to him that morning burned like fire in the air. "You're finished." And then the convoy rolled away, leaving him standing in the heat, alone. Chibu let out a slow breath and looked up at the blazing sun. Somewhere in the distance, the black SUV that carried the hooded man vanished into the city like smoke. He had saved her life, but it might just cost him his own. The sun rose over Banana Island like a burning coin, flooding Madame Adaku Obioma's mansion with an unforgiving light. The air outside was already restless. Birds chattered on rooftops, generators hummed in the distance, and Lagos gossip blogs were ablaze. By 7 a.m., the headlines were everywhere. Driver slaps billionaire madam, madness or heroism. Chauffeur assaults Adaku Obioma in broad daylight. Rolls-Royce incident. What really happened? Some blogs wrote that Chibu was drunk. Others claimed he had been planning to blackmail her. A few whispered that he might be a hired assassin. And in Madame Adaku's mansion, the truth was the last thing on her mind. She sat in her private living room, a massive white hall with gold detailing on the ceiling, chandeliers that sparkled like frozen lightning, and a rug so soft it swallowed your footsteps. She wore a red silk robe, her hair neatly tied back, and her fingers, adorned with gold rings, tapped the glass table with slow, deadly precision. Her anger burned hotter than the sun. A long trail of cigarette smoke curled from the ashtray beside her. She wasn't a habitual smoker, only when she was furious. 2 bodyguards stood behind her. The housekeeper hovered at the corner, head bowed. No one dared breathe too loud. Everyone in that house knew what happened the day Madame Adaku was in a mood like this. Heads rolled. Then the sound of footsteps echoed in the marble hallway. Chibu was dragged in. His uniform was wrinkled, blood drying on the corner of his mouth from a slap he'd received from a police officer earlier that morning. His wrists bore the red marks of tight handcuffs. He knelt at the entrance of the room, head bowed. 2 policemen stood behind him like wolves guarding prey. Madame Adaku leaned back slowly in her seat, one hand on the armrest, the other tapping her diamond ring against the glass. Clink, clink, clink. Each tap sounded like a gavel. "Madam, please," Chibu began, voice trembling but sincere. "I swear to God Almighty it was to save your life." There was a gun. "Shut up!" Her voice cracked through the room like a whip. Even the policeman stiffened. She slammed her hand on the glass table, the diamond on her ring glinting sharply. "You dare touch me? Me? Do you know who I am?" The housekeeper flinched. A bird outside the window flew away. Silence filled the room again, thick like smoke. Chibu lifted his face, his eyes red and tired but steady. "Madam, I've been driving you for 3 years. 3 good years. I would never hurt you. That slap, it saved your life. Madam, there was a black SUV." "Enough!" she cut in, rising to her feet. Her robe flowed like a queen's cloak, her shadow stretching across the marble. "I don't care what your mouth is vomiting. You laid your filthy hand on me, on Adaku Obioma. That alone is enough to destroy your miserable life." The words hit him like stones. He looked around the room, searching for one sympathetic face. He found none. She turned to the policeman. "Take him. Let him rot in that cell and make sure he never comes near this compound again." "Yes, madam," one of them barked, pulling Chibu roughly by the arm. He stumbled, but didn't resist. There was no point. In the world of the rich, truth didn't always matter. Power did. As he was dragged toward the door, Madame Adaku added, her voice colder than winter, "You're finished, Chibuzo." And just like that, the man who had saved her life was dismissed like garbage. Nene Okoro sat in Madame's home office, the PA system still buzzing with calls from the press. She was 26, ambitious, and razor smart. But she wasn't just Madame's personal assistant. She was also someone who knew too much. Her long fingers flew across the keyboard as she opened the CCTV footage from the Rolls-Royce. Every car in Madame's convoy was fitted with high-resolution cameras. She clicked play. The recording started from the moment Chibu shouted, "Madame!" She saw the black SUV. She saw the gun glint. She saw him slam the brakes and slap Madame just as the bullet tore through the window. Nene froze. Her eyes widened as the realization hit her like a slap of its own. He was telling the truth," she whispered. She leaned closer, rewinding the footage again and again. There was no doubt. That slap saved Madame's life. Her heart pounded. She reached for her phone to call Madame, but then her hand paused. She remembered something. Just last week, Chief Gozi, Madame's husband, had called her privately. He had promised her something big, a promotion, money, a house, if she could keep him informed about Madame's movements. And she did. She told herself it wasn't betrayal, it was survival. But if she told Madame the truth now, if she revealed the footage, Chief Gozi's promise would vanish. And worse, she might end up in the middle of something much darker. She shut the laptop slowly, her mind racing. Do I save the driver or save myself? She rose from the chair, looked at the closed office door, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Chibu." The holding cell was damp, dim, and smelled of sweat and stale cigarettes. The metal bars were rusty, and a single bulb flickered overhead like a tired heart. Chibu sat on the cold floor, his head resting against the wall. He could still hear the echo of Madame's voice. "You're finished." His cheek still ached from the officer's slap. His wrists burned from the handcuffs. But worse than the physical pain was the crack in his soul. He had given everything to serve that woman, loyalty, Time, his life, and in return, she gave him humiliation. "No so rich people they do," one of the cellmates muttered from the corner. "You go die for them, dem go still step on your head." Chibu didn't reply. His thoughts were heavy, swimming in regret and disbelief. Maybe I should have just minded my business. Maybe I should have let that bullet. He stopped himself. Number. He would not curse his own conscience. His father had once told him, "Chibuzo, always do the right thing, even when the world slaps you for it." He never thought it would be this literal. At the mansion gates, whispers had started to spread among the staff like wind through dry grass. Gardeners, cooks, security guards. They had all heard what happened. "If no be that slap," the head gardener said, shaking his head, "Madam for don die yesterday. Person way save am. Na him dem arrest, rich people no get conscience." One cleaner spat, her hands on her hips. "She for at least hear wettin' the boy won't talk." Dem say bullet pass her head, oh." Another added in a hushed voice, "God save him through that boy." They all talked in secret, in corners where cameras didn't reach. None of them dared to say it out loud in front of Madam, but in their hearts they knew who the real hero was. In Madam Adaku's room, she paced back and forth in her silk robe, fury still clouding her judgment. To her, the humiliation wasn't the slap itself. It was who delivered it, a driver, someone beneath her. The fact that the media had turned the incident into gossip made it worse. Some blogs had posted memes. One even wrote, "The slap that shook Ikoyi. Madam Adaku's face met the hand of destiny." She threw her phone against the wall, shattering it. "They're laughing at me," she screamed. Her chief bodyguard stepped into the doorway. "Madam, the police have taken the driver. He'll be charged with assault. Do you want to press more charges?" She didn't even hesitate. "Yes, let him rot." That evening, the rain fell hard over Lagos. The sound of it hitting the police station's zinc roof was deafening. In the cell, water dripped from a cracked pipe. Chibu sat shivering in the corner. He had no jacket, no food, and no lawyer. But he wasn't alone. An older man, a traffic offender, sat on the opposite bench watching him. "You be the boy we slapped that rich madam?" the old man finally asked. Chibu didn't respond. I hear your story for radio. Dem say na you save him from bullet." Chibu finally looked up. The old man chuckled sadly. "This life no balance. You go save person, we go still kill your name." Chibu managed a weak smile, but deep inside, something was hardening in him. A realization. Loyalty could be a curse when it was one-sided. At Nene's apartment, Nene sat on her couch, the CCTV footage playing on her laptop once again. The bullet, the slap, the truth. She bit her lower lip and stared at the phone. A text from Chief Gozi blinked on the screen. "Good girl. Don't get involved. We'll talk soon." She felt sick. She had always told herself she wasn't a bad person, just smart, just surviving. But the way Chibu's face looked as the police dragged him out of the mansion replayed in her head like a haunting song. "God, what am I doing?" she whispered. Back at the police station. Midnight. The rain had stopped. The city had gone quiet, except for the distant hum of generators. Chibu's eyes were half closed when he heard footsteps. A police officer banged the iron bars. "Wake up, driver man." Chibu jerked upright. "You get visitor." His heart skipped. Maybe Madam had finally seen reason. Maybe she knew now. But when he was led to the front desk, he didn't see Madam. He saw Nene. She was wearing a black hoodie, her hair tied up. Her eyes darted around nervously, as if she didn't want to be seen. "Nene?" he whispered, confused. "Why are you here?" She swallowed hard, her voice low. "I saw everything, Chibu." "I saw the footage?" His eyes widened. "So, you know I was telling the truth." She nodded slowly. "Yes, you saved her life." "Then tell her," he snapped. "Tell her, before they finish me in this place." Nanny looked away, guilt slicing through her like a blade. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm in a cell for saving someone's life. What's more complicated than that?" Her voice shook. "I can't talk now. I just needed you to know that I know." And just like that, she turned and walked away into the night, leaving him staring after her, a man trapped in a storm he didn't create. By dawn, Lagos was still buzzing with the story. Every newspaper headline screamed about the driver who dared to slap a billionaire. Some said he was a villain, some said he was a hero, but only a few people and one hidden CCTV camera knew the real truth. And in Madame Adaku's mansion, while her empire polished its image and silenced the media, the price of loyalty was being paid in a small, cold cell. And the man who saved her life sat in the darkness, alone. The rain fell in thin silver spears that night over Ikoyi, tapping against the tall glass windows of Madame Adaku's mansion. The city lights shimmered through the drizzle like restless spirits. Inside her private study, a room lined with polished mahogany, gold-trimmed shelves, and a massive oil painting of her late father, Madame Adaku sat alone in a velvet robe the color of blood. The wine glass in her hand caught the light, casting a red shadow across her face. Her hair, usually pulled back in tight elegance, fell loosely over her shoulders. She had worn power like a crown all her life, but tonight it felt heavy, too heavy. She lifted the wine to her lips, but the taste was bitter, not from the wine, but from the memory that refused to die. Chibu's shout, the slap that burned, the sound of shattering glass as a bullet kissed the air where her head should have been. Her jaw tightened. She hated remembering it, hated the humiliation, but even more, she hated the way the memory wouldn't let her breathe. Because beneath the sting of pride was a question that had begun to eat at her soul. Why would someone want her dead? Her hands trembled slightly as she poured herself another drink. Then she leaned back in the leather chair, staring at nothing. Outside, thunder cracked like a gunshot. Just then the door burst open. Mama Nkechi, the elderly housekeeper, stumbled in, her wrapper loosely tied, her eyes wide with fear. "Madam, Madam Adaku!" she gasped, clutching the edge of the doorframe. Adaku's voice snapped like a whip. "What is it, Mama Nkechi?" "It's past midnight. You need to see this." The woman held a remote, her hand shaking as she pointed to the giant flat-screen TV mounted on the far wall. Adaku frowned, but pressed the power button on the remote. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly the entire study felt colder. Breaking news! Hired gunman arrested in Lekki confession reveals target. Billionaire oil mogul Madame Adaku Eze. The anchor's voice rang out, urgent and heavy. A grainy video showed a man in handcuffs, tall, muscular, face masked in shadows. His eyes were dead, lifeless, like a man who had already seen hell and decided to make a home in it. "This is the suspect arrested earlier tonight in connection with an attempted assassination on Madame Adaku Eze, a prominent businesswoman," the reporter continued. "Authorities say the man confessed to accepting a large sum of money to eliminate her. Shocking details in his confession have revealed the mastermind behind the plot. Adaku's fingers gripped the wineglass so tightly her knuckles turned white. The camera cut to the suspect's lips as he spoke in a hoarse, low voice. "I was paid by Chief Gozi." The glass slipped from her hand. Crash! Red wine spilled across the white Persian rug like blood. For a moment, Madame Adaku couldn't hear anything else, just the sound of her heart pounding in her ears. Chief Gozi, her husband, her partner, the man who stood beside her at every board meeting, the man who held her hand at every charity ball, the man she believed shared her dreams. The study began to spin. Her knees weakened, her breath came in short gasps. She staggered backward and clutched the edge of her father's painting for balance. "No, no, it's not true," she whispered to herself. But the TV didn't lie. The reporter repeated the name like a bell of doom. Chief Gozi Ease. Her world, built over years of wealth, power, and loyalty, cracked in a single night. Minutes later, her lawyers were on the phone. Her security detail rushed in with panicked faces, but Madame Adaku barely heard their questions. "She's in shock," whispered one of the guards. "She looks like she's seen a ghost." But what she had seen was worse than a ghost. She had seen betrayal, raw, sharp, and personal, the kind that bleeds you from the inside. She stumbled into her dressing room, slammed the door shut, and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her flawless makeup from earlier that evening had smudged. Her red lipstick smeared at the corner of her mouth like blood. "Gozi," she whispered, her voice breaking. She remembered the night they met, in a smoky, high-end bar in Victoria Island. He had been charming, smooth, already powerful. She had been ambitious and hungry. Together, they built an empire, or so she thought. Now she realized she had built a castle with a serpent in its foundation. And then another image flashed in her mind, not of Gozi, but of Chibu, the driver, the man she humiliated, the man she sent to prison for assaulting her, when in truth he had saved her life. Guilt pierced her chest like a spear. Rain washed the streets of Ikoyi clean as her black Rolls-Royce Phantom sliced through the night. Madame Adaku sat in the back seat, her hands clasped tightly, her face pale. She didn't wear her usual diamonds or power suit. Just a black turtleneck and a long trench coat. No makeup, no guards trailing behind her. The driver slowed to a stop in front of the police station. The fluorescent bulbs flickered weakly above the gate. "Madam, are you sure about this?" asked Nene, her personal assistant, from the front passenger seat. Her voice trembled, not from the cold, but from fear. Nene had seen the footage too, and the guilt in her own heart was eating at her. She knew about Chief Gozi's shady deals. She had kept quiet. Now everything was unraveling. Madame Adaku's reply was calm, but her eyes were like burning coals. "Yes," she whispered, "I need to fix what I broke." She stepped out of the car. The rain soaked through her coat, but she didn't care. The security men at the gate straightened immediately when they saw her. "Madam, welcome," one of them stammered. "We didn't expect—" "Take me to him," she cut in coldly. Inside, the smell of damp walls, sweat, and iron bars hung thick in the air. The hallway echoed with the sound of dripping water and distant snores. A uniformed officer, nervous, led her down a narrow corridor. "Madam, he's been here 3 days," the officer said quietly. "No lawyer. No visitors." He didn't even try to call anyone. She stopped in front of the cell. The officer unlocked the gate. There he was, Chibu, His once clean white shirt was now stained and torn. His lip was bruised, one eye swollen slightly from the beating he'd received during the arrest. Yet there was something unbroken in his eyes, something steady. He was sitting quietly on the cold floor, head bowed, whispering a prayer under his breath. When he looked up and saw her, his entire body tensed, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. For a moment, silence filled the air between them like a thick fog. "Madam," he said hoarsely. No salute, no fear, just pain. She stepped closer, the sound of her heels echoing softly. For the first time in years, her voice was stripped of pride. "Chibu," she whispered, "I came to say I was wrong." He didn't speak. He just stared at her. Tears welled up in her eyes, something no one had seen Madame Adaku do, not in boardrooms, not in public, not even at her mother's funeral. But now, standing before the man she wronged, the dam broke. "I didn't believe you. I let my pride blind me," she said, voice shaking. "You saved my life. If not for that slap," her voice caught, "I would have been dead." The officer swallowed hard. Even he wasn't prepared for what happened next. Madame Adaku, billionaire, oil tycoon, Lagos power queen, slowly knelt on the wet, dirty floor in front of her driver. The entire station fell silent. Chibu's eyes widened. "Madam, no, please, stand up." But she didn't. Her trembling hands reached for his. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for humiliating you, for putting you in this cell, for not seeing the truth." For the first time since the shooting, Chibu's hardened expression softened. He saw it, not just her words, but the weight behind them. The woman before him wasn't the untouchable Madame Adaku Lagos feared. She was human, frightened, grateful. "Madam, I did what any man would do," he said quietly. "You were in danger." "I didn't have time to explain." She nodded slowly, tears running down her face. "I know, and I'll make it right." She turned to the officer. "Release him." Now the officer didn't hesitate. Minutes later, they stepped outside. The rain was still falling, heavier now. Chibu inhaled deeply. The air smelled like wet earth and new beginnings. For the first time in days, he was free. Madame Adaku stood beside him, the rain dripping from her hair. She turned to him, unsure if he would even forgive her. But he simply gave a small nod. "Thank you," she said. He replied, "Protecting you was my job, madam. But saving you, that was something else." She looked at him, truly looked at him. For the first time, she didn't see just a driver. She saw a man who had risked everything for someone who didn't deserve it. Somewhere deep in her chest, something shifted. By dawn, news of Chief Gozi's betrayal flooded every channel. His face was on every headline. "Husband of oil mogul arrested for attempted murder." The empire they built together was crumbling, but Adaku didn't feel fear anymore. She felt something else, clarity. She sat on the veranda of her mansion, wrapped in a shawl, watching the sky turn gold. Chibu stood a few steps away, freshly cleaned, silent, but present. "You could have left me to die," she said softly. He shrugged. "I couldn't. I may be your driver, but I'm also a man, and a man protects life." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Then maybe, Chibu, I owe you mine." He didn't respond, but in that silence something powerful passed between them. Trust rebuilt, respect reborn. Little did they both know, this was only the beginning of a bigger storm. The city of Lagos had never seen a scandal like it. Every newspaper, every radio station, every gossip blog, from Banana Island to the bustling streets of Oshodi, carried the same explosive headline: "Chief Gozi arrested. Assassination plot on billionaire wife uncovered. The slap that saved a life and exposed a kingdom of lies. The images were everywhere. Chief Gozy in handcuffs, escorted out of his glass mansion, police raiding his offices, frozen accounts worth billions of naira being splashed across news screens. But the biggest image of all was not of him, it was of her, Madame Adaku Eze, the queen who was supposed to die but lived. And at the center of it all was a man no one expected, Chibu, the nobody driver whose single act of courage had changed the course of everything. Inside Adaku's mansion, everything felt different. Gone were the hollow, glittering parties where men in agbaras whispered secrets over champagne. Gone were the masked smiles of politicians who had once kissed her hand but sharpened their knives behind her back. Now the house was quieter, cleaner, real. Madame Adaku sat in the grand living room, a cathedral of marble, gold, and glass. Her long black gown flowed across the couch like silk. Her once perfectly made-up face was bare, but she looked stronger than she ever had. In front of her stood Chibu. His hair was freshly trimmed, his white shirt crisp, and his black trousers neatly ironed. But it wasn't the clothes that had changed. It was the way he stood, not as a servant, not as a driver, but as a man who had faced death, survived humiliation, and walked through fire without breaking. "Chibu," she said softly. "Yes, madam," he answered, though his voice carried a different weight now, respectful, but no longer fearful. She rose to her feet and walked slowly toward him. Every step echoed in the wide room, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. "I trusted the wrong man for too long," she said. "I let snakes sleep in my bed and wear crowns in my house. But when everything burned, it was you standing." He shifted, unsure how to respond. She extended her hand. "You are no longer my driver." His eyes flickered in shock. She smiled faintly, the kind that came not from power, but from truth. "From today, I name you head of security and my personal advisor. You will sit at my right hand. You will protect me, not just from bullets, but from the shadows I've been too blind to see. Madam, He began, his voice rough with emotion. She stopped him gently. "No, not madam. From now on, between us, just Adaku." He froze, unsure if he heard correctly. For a woman like her to strip away the title that defined her, that was something deeper than gratitude. That was trust. And in that moment, something shifted permanently. The hierarchy that had once ruled their worlds, madam and driver, dissolved like mist. Months passed, and the bond between Madame Adaku and Chibu grew deeper than either of them expected. What began as loyalty slowly turned into something stronger. Quiet glances, long conversations by the pool, and a trust that no scandal could break. One breezy Friday afternoon, beneath the golden glow of a small garden in Ikoyi, Chibu knelt before the woman he once called Madam. "I never imagined I'd find love this way," he whispered. Adaku smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You didn't just save my life, Chibu. You became it." Weeks later, dressed simply but elegantly, they stood side by side at the Ikoyi marriage registry. The once billionaire madam and her former driver exchanged vows, sealing a love story that shocked Lagos and warmed the hearts of many. The slap that once divided them became the moment that united them forever.